This is day 4 of the February 94 7-day retreat at Springwater. I've noted down 3 questions that have come up and have maybe some relationship with each other. I will read them as I noted them down. They're not verbatim, as the people have said them. Why do you always talk about looking at negative things inside us? Like fear, anger, competitiveness, jealousy. Why not sometimes look at some of the positive things? Like curiosity or joy. I don't remember what others were mentioned. Maybe just these 2. When I sit here, I feel love for my parents, and I feel no harm or hurt. Yet when I'm with them, all my buttons are pushed. Is it possible to be with them and feel this love and no harm? Is there any meeting, or a person said, I think, cross-section between seeing our thoughts and compassion? This question of why do you talk about negative things in us is not the first time that this has come up. It comes up every once in a while. Of course, it is for each one of us to look when a question comes up. What is the ground that it comes out of? Not just to stick with the content of the question and keep on going with that, but to ask, why am I asking this? Does it bother me to hear the negative things about human beings? Do I rather come here to forget about them, not to have to deal with them? I want to feel joy and hear about that, about love, compassion, curiosity, creativity in human beings, because that inspires me to feel good, related, good positive energy. So that is for each one of us. It's amazing how our own ground for asking questions, the motives for them, can be plumbed and reveal amazing answers. Now this is already pointing toward the negative again. I don't mean to do that. I'm just looking at what is there. Now, if there is joy and love manifesting in a human being, that is no obstacle. That actually comes out of the clarity and non-self-centeredness of being here. Maybe just for moments at a time. And that love and joy are never a problem to a human being or to our relationship with each other. Curiosity, I think curiosity is implied in this whole work that we're doing, and we've talked about it. Not directly about human curiosity, but about this wondering about what we are, what everything is. And there's a beauty in this capacity to wonder. A lot of us have lost it. We had it as children. wondering about everything. Everything is new and worthy of being observed. Remember when we used to put our son just into the grass? He was a tiny baby, couldn't walk yet or crawl. He would just sit there and sort of stroke the grass blades and be absorbed by watching movement in trees. Because was that really what he was absorbed in? But he was watching it, following it. And our walking with our grandson over a hilly, wavy terrain once. The first time he came to a little hillock and then went down the other side, he just turned right around and went back up again. And since we were grandparents and not in a rush to get him back home, we stood there till he was done with it. Up and down, just the joy of the momentum or whatever I'm already interpreting. He was just doing it over and over with tremendous satisfaction. And then coming by a shady place where some trees cast some shadows. It was a very hot day. He would walk in that and out of it, and into it, and out of it, again into it, and out of it. And we came to a parking place. There was a truck parked with huge tires, and he went up to them and just felt the tires around and round and round. Hubcaps he was patting against them. Today, he plays video games with great skill. The last one I saw him play, he had never been given that by his parents, or grandparents for that matter, but he had some money and he rented one in a store while we were there for Christmas together. That was an amazing thing. I don't know if some of you have seen it. It's sort of some armored guards around a tall, what looks like an apartment building with their guns, and every once in a while, mostly a female appearing and shooting her down. Some female apparition there, personage. He was doing it endlessly. So, finding ourselves here for whatever reason, all of us came here together. Is there curiosity to find out? I don't mean to ask scholarly questions or to pursue meditative inquiry as a principle, because this is what is said on the letterhead. But interested in what we are. Because if we don't really know what we are, and I don't mean knowledge, but the direct finding out from moment to moment of what holds and moves and blocks this body-mind, then we persist in hurting ourselves and each other in unaware ways, finding all kinds of reasons for it, because the brain will be ever ready to rationalize its actions with reasons that may not come out of plumbing the whole thing and finding out what moves us, what motivates us, why we do what we do and don't do, what seems rationally so obvious, to love each other and get along with each other, take care of each other. And of ourselves. I don't mean at the expense of oneself. So actually, personality, as I use this word, you may have different definitions for it or usage for it. The way I use it, personality is that whole bundle of acquired, conditioned responses. character is, I see it as conditioned by circumstances, by education, by the way our parents were, by the experience we've had. Traumatic ones, happy ones, generous ones, scarcity, war. All of this forms the character and the personality, together with our inherited capacities, which come from a pool of potentiality for human characteristics, sort of filtering into each individual human being through the meeting of the egg and sperm, carrying their DNA. All of this, together with the circumstances which are met, the care received or the lack of caring, constantly grumbling or unfriendly parents, or laughing or happy parents, all of this becomes what we call our personality, our character, the perseverance. One could watch it. If you have watched some of the Olympic Games, we watched some of it. Incredible perseverance in people to win that goal, to get a medal. And all that goes with it in human relations with one's competitors. One cannot win without someone else losing. It's impossible. And watching it, can one notice one's engagement, one's identification with certain competitors, maybe of one's own country? Very likely so. The news presents mostly that. Everything else is just draped around the competitors of one's own country. So how did a person get to be that tough, that persistent, that goal-oriented, and that concentrated? The downhill skiing these days is a sheer miracle. Having tampered with skiing myself in the past, incomprehensible to me, because I had started with wooden skis without edges, a little street boot. But what it takes. How has that been formed? How did this come about? And what are its side effects? The devastation in people in losing, and still having to face an interviewer who sort of digs into that devastation. And the utter glory, ecstasy of having won that gold or silver. What makes for that character and personality? So, in looking at what moves us, often so unawares, we may be totally unaware of anger or become more and more aware of it. Is that important, or is that being negativistic to talk about it, to go into it, to look at hatred or jealousy? One person just threw it right out in the meeting. A person I would call very friendly and kindly, but this is what was moving this person, wanting to investigate it, find out more about it, learn about it. And the amazing thing is, if there is an openness and a curiosity to be with it, to question it, and also to be quiet in its presence, to let it reveal itself, show itself superficially and also deeply. If an insight happens, then there's joy, no matter what it is that is seen. Someone mentioned this morning, I found out something. I thought I was so altruistic toward my wife. And I realized I wanted to be good to myself. It was that my own satisfaction or well-being was really involved, not being good to her. And he laughed, not out of callousness, but because discovery brings joy. Because because there is a freeing from the pattern in the seeing. Not that it'll never be there again, or not that one will always be attentive or aware. But self-discovery or self-realization, self-knowledge, all these words that have been used, is this process of directness, direct touch of what's true this moment. With all judgments falling off, they're not needed, and they are of a different mindset. Judgmentalness is a mindset which also needs exploration. The curiosity to find out about our constant judgmentalness. Not attacking it to get rid of it, but wondering about it, gently, openly, spaciously. And maybe for a moment, whatever time length doesn't matter, it drops off. There's no judgmentalness about oneself or others. The world is open. And with that comes joy. And maybe also love and compassion. For all of us who are so judgmental, so locked in to constantly put ourselves down, and the others, of course, with us. If we put ourselves down, we inevitably put others down. All of these movements can become very observable in the light of day. The light of day meaning an open awareness, neutral awareness, which is not there to be critical of oneself or affirming of oneself, neither. Just to reveal the truth, what's there, this moment. And the reason that these so-called negative things about us do come up in talks is that they're brought up in meetings. This is what we're struggling with, our constant anger, or fear, or self-hatred. And in saying this, not trying to put us down, can we be free of it by seeing it clearly? Maybe just for a moment at a time, so that the sun can break through the clouds. It does, it's always there. It's the miracle of flying through the clouds. Never yet flown any place where the sun wasn't there above the clouds. It was always there. So, when there's attention, when the mind opens up, attention is there. It's always there when it's there. When it's not there, it's not there. Doesn't have to theorize about whether it's there all the time when it's not there, but when it's there, there it is. Is it there now? The breathing, the listening, the physical sensations, movements, where the knees touch the mat, the hands touch the thighs, buttocks touch the cushion or the base of the chair. And maybe all kinds of thoughts there. Maybe liking what is said or disliking what is said. Wanting more or wanting less. Can that all be just there, dancing around like the dust dances around in a beam of light? The light just illumines the dust. It doesn't try to do away with it. It just illumines it, and the dust looks like dancing gold. So utterly important, the way I see it, that we do look at what is so-called negative about us and not even call it that. Not call it even by the word anger or jealousy or whatever. We talked about it at length with fear yesterday and maybe the day before with pain. Let the word go, if possible. Plumbing or diving into what's there, not being separate from it, and yet not wallowing in it. Just this gentle, permeating inquiry, what is it? Or just wondering. If the whole state of this organism is one of wondering, there does not have to be any explicit question, because then everything is not known and appears freshly. Let's go to the next question. Sitting here thinking of my parents, I love them. I feel no harm, no anger toward them. Why, when I'm there, all buttons are pushed? And is it possible to be with them and the buttons not be pushed? There being this love and not a remembrance of harm or danger or whatever all one may feel in the presence of one's parents, being put down, or it's no problem if the love is there. We're not talking about problemless things, we're looking at problems. But when this person mentioned this, immediately what came to memory, I've mentioned it other times in talks, but there's a lot of new people, and people have told me they don't mind hearing things over, so here comes. The first time I saw my mother without having an image of her. We already had our son, we were visiting in Switzerland. There she stood in the dining room against her favorite place where she had all her collections, a glass case. And without any intention or thought about it or any attempt or trying, no effort, it just happened. There she was. Never seen her like that before. And the relationship with my mother had been difficult. I always used to be afraid of her. She was easily angered. And I told her that once, that I'd always been afraid of her. She was shocked. She was absolutely shocked and sad. She hadn't been aware of it, that this is how she came on. It's so difficult, isn't it, for us to realize how we come on in the presence of other people, that our anger affects others, intimidates them, makes them shy or afraid. Maybe we feel it a little bit. It gives us a feeling of power. But as long as we bask in that or use it or manipulate it, we cannot feel how other people around us feel in the presence of our angry being. At that time, when I mentioned it to her and when she was so shocked, of course she was defensive and immediately aggressive. Told me for saying this. And I can't even fathom today how I ever brought it across my lips. But this time, when I saw her, there was nothing there from the past. The mind was free and open, and here and there she was. And with that came a real surge of lovingness toward her and toward everything. It's never, when lovingness arises out of a state of no image, it's not just specific for one person. It's also for the glass case and the clouds outside, and the rug and the other people around. That's the beauty of it. It just sort of pours over like an overflowing well. And what was also interesting, because I sort of tested it at that moment or some time in that vicinity, I didn't have any compulsion to live up of any image that I knew she may have or had of me. I was free of that too. Do you know what I mean? Particularly with your mother or father. It's not just the image you have of them, but how you know they see you, and we're strapped into that. We live up to it, of how we are seen. It's a tremendous straitjacket to find oneself in. Already feeling guilty before one has done anything, because one is seen that way, as having done something. And all of that was just there, gone. It wasn't there. So how did it happen? I can't say. It just happens. These things happen. And many people tell me about it happening. So it is a occurrence which is possible for all of us. And it may have some connection. I'm actually convinced it does, but I don't want to propose any rigid things. Has some connection with wondering about oneself, curious about images we have of each other, the power of them, to direct our actions, not toward the person, but toward the image we have, to react positively or negatively, depending on what we remember or have been learning about this person of this race, of this religion, of this nationality, of this ethnic group. I'm using right now the very obvious things which convulse this world. Constant bloodbath. Not seeing human beings struggling with the same problems as I do, but stereotyped cartoons. And beginning to wonder about all of that. What motivates us? What imagery is there? To come upon an image is not depressing if the mind state is open, non-judgmental. Of course, if there's judgment, then it's not openness. And then one will condemn oneself for having images and try to get rid of them. Because one has the image of being a person without images, at least one ought to be such a person. And the whole thing just perpetuates itself in a new form. I remember actually coming home when I used to go to retreat. Our son was then 8 and over. It started when he was 8. And coming home from a retreat, he couldn't push my buttons with nothing, and he felt it too. We had a very special relationship at that time. A direct lifeline. Because when your buttons are not pushed, you can embrace someone, and you see where he's coming from. And children still have a great deal of direct intuition about the state of their parents. One time when I was trying to teach him a little bit of Buddhism, he said, "Mom, it's done you whole bunches of good, but please lay off of me." Which I did. It was no use. So let's just ponder this question, each one of us. Can we be in each other's presence without our buttons being pushed? Seeing how much they are pushed and observing it spaciously. And I think in a retreat where there's a lot of quiet sitting and walking and talking about it in a talk and maybe in meetings, this all sort of has sort of the effect of loosening hard soil. Like when with a plow or with a spade, to loosen it up so sun and rain can penetrate it. And then maybe something is seen. A button about to be pushed, but is not yet pushed, is about to be pushed. And the reaction has not yet touched the vocal cords. It doesn't have to come out. That's the best of cases. Or else it bursts out, explodes out, and there's an awareness of it, which hasn't been there before. Before there was just justification and defense and counterattack. And now there's something a little bit different. Some cognizance of what's going on. More transparent to oneself, and therefore also the other people becoming more transparent. They're also not doing this intentionally. Oh, we feel somebody has hurt me intentionally. They really wanted to hurt me. And maybe on a certain level one can say that he wanted to hurt me, or I want to hurt her. I really want to hurt her, get her goat. But what is that wanting based on? Is that a free choice? Or is it based on a whole chain of reactiveness? Going back to Adam and Eve. Not just our childhood of our parents and our whole society and civilization. All our character traits and potentials passed on from one generation to the next. Often codified even in our religious books, like an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I'm sure other religious books have similar injunctions. It's never just one. These things grow out of soil. I don't mean pejoratively. Grow out of a common ground of human psychological dynamics. Remembering what you did to me, and I'm going to do it back to you, or if not to you, then to someone else. Not so rationally, but it happens automatically. And as long as there's no light, no awareness, it keeps on going. And I'm not talking about negative sides of human beings, but the way we are. And questioning whether we have to be this way, or whether ignorance and compulsion, unawareness cannot give way to something new. More permeation with attention. So the third question, which was, is there any cross-section between sort of watching one's thoughts in a detached way? The person used that word. Please, I'm not able to repeat verbatim how it was put, but I'm sort of getting the gist of it for all of us. Is there any cross-section between a detached way of watching one's thoughts and compassion? Love, an open heart. Because it sounds so dry, so intellectual to just be aware of my thoughts. This question has come up recently in a group discussion in another retreat. Just seeing what goes on in the mind and around us, and around us, just sort of like a perfectly sensitive photograph, high resolution. There it is, the photograph. But where's the heart? Where's love in this? And doesn't being fully alive means a harmony between the open heart and mind? A freely functioning intelligence and an open heart. It's very easy to mistake the clarity of thinking about oneself and knowing about oneself. Maybe in psychological ways, one has studied it or is working in that field. The clarity of description and of analysis. The clarity of thinking about ourselves, our interaction, from accumulated knowledge. Very easy to mistake that clarity of thinking and analyzing for the clarity of seeing it happen directly, from moment to moment, not from memory or knowledge, but here it is, about to react, about to hit back, or be hurt, withdraw. Such a tremendous difference, but it's hard to see the difference. If one thinks it has never happened, because I doubt that it has not happened for any one of us, this opening, seeing directly something. I'm sure it has happened at one time or other for all of us, maybe just not just once. But it's so quickly overlaid with judgment and comment and wanting and repressing or whatever, that the moment of awareness is sort of landslided over. And then the clarity of thinking about it may be taken for the directness of seeing. But it isn't. They're two entirely different things. The openness of discovering a thought, an image, goes with an opening of heart. It's one opening. Isn't it? I'm saying it. Please find out. Let's discuss it. Experiment with it. Look at it. Because at this moment of freedom from compulsive patterns of reacting, of imaging, buttons being pushed, at the moment of freedom from that, what would plug that well any longer, that well of loving? It is unplugged. So again, not to put oneself down when it's realized that one is just thinking about oneself or others. But be aware of that it is thinking, not judgmentally, but factually, actually. for a moment, a glimpse of thinking. And not, oh, here are these thoughts again. Couldn't I ever be free of thoughts like others are? It's more thoughts. Plugging up the moment of just seeing a thought arise and go. It's nothing spectacular. It's what happens as the crow is cawing and the sun breaking through the clouds, snow twirling, breath in and out. But it's different when it's happening in an open space of no judgment. It may feel like the ice cracking and melting and flowing downstream. We will end here for today.